It is a remark of St. Philip Neri's latest biographer that our saint, quote, was profoundly convinced that there is in music and in song a mysterious and almighty power to stir the heart with high and noble emotion, and an especial fitness to raise it above sense to the love of heavenly things. In like manner, the saint's illustrious son, Cardinal Newman, has spoken of, quote, the emotion which some gentle, peaceful strain excites in us, and how soul and body are wrapped and carried away captive by the concord of musical sounds, where the ear is open to their power. How, too, music, quote, is the expression of ideas greater and more profound than any in the visible world, ideas which center, indeed, in Him whom Catholicism manifests, who is the seat of all beauty, order, and perfection whatever. Unquote. Music, then, to him, was no, quote, mere ingenuity or trick of art, like some game or fashion of the day without meaning, unquote. For him, man, quote, sweeps the strings, and they thrill with an ecstatic meaning. Is it possible, he asks, that inexhaustible evolution and disposition of notes, so rich, yet so simple, so intricate, yet so regulated, so various, yet so majestic, should be a mere sound which is gone and perishes? Can it be that those mysterious stirrings of heart, and keen emotions, and strange yearnings after we know not what, and awful impressions from we know not whence, should be wrought in us by what is unsubstantial, and comes and goes, and begins and ends in itself? It is not so. It cannot be. No, they have escaped from some higher sphere. They are the outpourings of eternal harmony in the medium of created sound. They are echoes from our home. They are the voice of angels, or the Magnificat of saints, or the living laws of divine governance, or the divine attributes. Something are they, beside themselves, which we cannot compass, which we cannot utter. And with him, as with St. Philip, may we not say that music held a foremost place in his thoughts and plans?
Ecce Agnus Dei, ecce qui tollit peccata mundi, beati qui ad coenam anni vocati sunt. Domine non sum dignius, od intre subtectum meum, sed tantum dic verbo, et sanabitur anima mea. Corpus Christi custodit me in vitam aeternam.
The music and singing that is accompanying our liturgy, said Pope Benedict XVI in his homily at Pentecost Holy Mass, May 31st, 2009, also helps us to unite in prayer, and in this regard I express a lively recognition of the choir of the Cologne Cathedral and the Cologne Chamber Orchestra. Joseph Haydn's Harmoniemes, the last of the masses composed by this great musician, and a sublime symphony for the glory of God, was chosen for today's Mass. The Haydn Mass was a fitting choice given that this is the bicentennial of the composer's death. I address a cordial greeting to all those who have come for this." Unquote. Though neglected and isolated, apparently Zelenka was not alone. From somewhere he drew the strength, vivacity, and even gaiety to write his late masterpieces, the final three of which he called the Missae Ultimae. With no prospect of an audience for these works, for whom was Zelenka writing? He tells us in the dedication to the Missa Dei Patris, Mass in honor of God our Father, the Almighty God, creator of all things, the most sublime and best Father. Dedicated to him in deep humility, submissive veneration, and profound adoration with a contrite and humble heart, which he would not despise, by his most lowly, most humble, and most unworthy creature, Jan Dismas Zelenka. Like St. Philip, too, he took the word music in its widest sense, and made use of both vocal and instrumental music, and of their blended harmony. While we believe that he would have been the first to admit the beauty of loud portions of the old chant, its incomparable hymns in the liturgy, the familiar accentus dear to every Catholic ear, for the preface, the Pater Noster, etc., at the modes for Holy Week, the tones for the psalms of the Divine Office, etc., we question whether he would have made much of a mass of antiphons that seem to illustrate the sacred text. Quote, "All we like sheep have gone astray," unquote. In Gregorian music, said a writer in 1890, speaking more positively than we are able to do, Newman could see no beauty whatever, none at any rate, in the usual antiphons and tones. An exception must be made in favor of those familiar chants occurring in the Mass. I recollect his telling me, after we had heard one of Cherubini's masses admirably performed at the Birmingham festival, that the music, though so beautiful, needed the interspersing of those quaint old chants to make it really devotional. But, I believe, writes a friend, it is very difficult for one who has heard only Mozart and Beethoven in all his alias ever to get a liking for Gregorian tones. It used to drive Canon Oakley wild when he heard his nephew, the present Sir H. Oakley, play a fugue of Bach's, even on the organ. The Cardinal, however, liked the Modus Peregrinus to the In Exitu Israel. That was only natural, and I remember once he seemed quite put out, because once we followed the rubrics in Easter week, when In Exitu is used, by having all the psalms to one tone. For a moment it seemed as if he would contradict himself in his strict rule of going by authority against what he liked, and would change the phones so as to have the Peregrinus. He somewhere, however, calls Gregorian an inchoate science. Could medieval work, largely out of touch with the times, claim for itself a monopoly of existence to the exclusion of the modern? So loyal a son of Holy Church as Dr. Ward had let fall that a plain chant Gloria reminded him of original sin. And if sometimes, write a friend of old oratory days, we were so fortunate as to have on some weekday festival of Our Lady only the Gregorian Mass, Father Darnell used to say we were bearing Our Lady, and thought he would make no remark. And though he would make no remark, I have little doubt the Father thought so too. Perhaps then Cardinal Newman's love for vocal and instrumental ecclesiastical music in combination especially at Christmas, Easter, and Pentecost, was a true instinct, recognizing the undoubted needs of another day, and it's best labeled for a motto with some verses of the 149th and 150th Psalms, which we recommend to the attention of a few purists, in case they may have forgotten them. Thus acknowledging in January 1859 the Gothic to be the most beautiful of architectural styles, he cannot approve of the intolerance of some of its admirers, and he would claim the liberty of preferring, for the purposes of worship and devotion, a description of building which, though not so beautiful in outline, is more in accordance with the ritual of the present day, which is more cheerful in its exterior, and which admits more naturally of rich materials, of large pictures, or mosaics, and of mural decorations. My quarrel with Gothic and Gregorian, when coupled together, says Campbell in Loss and Gain, is that they are two ideas, not one. Have figured music in Gothic churches, keep your Gregorians for basilicas. Bateman. You seem oblivious that Gregorian chants and hymns have always accompanied Gothic aisles, Gothic copes, Gothic mitres, and Gothic chalices. Campbell. Our ancestors did what they could. They were great in architecture, small in music. They could not use what was not yet invented. They sang Gregorian because they had not Palestrina. Bateman. A paradox, a paradox. Campbell. Surely there is a close connection between the rise and nature of the Basilica and of Gregorian unison. Both existed before Christianity. Both are of pagan origin. Both were afterwards consecrated to the service of the Church. Bateman. Pardon me, Gregorians were Jewish, not pagan. Campbell. Be it so, for argument's sake, still at least they were not of Christian origin. Next, both the old music and the old architecture were inartificial and limited, and methods of exhibiting their respective arts. You can't have a large Grecian temple. You can't have a long Gregorian Gloria. Bateman. Not a long one. Why, there is poor Willis used to complain how tedious the old Gregorian compositions were abroad. Campbell. Of course you may produce them to any length, but merely by addition, not by carrying on the melody. You can't put two together and then have one twice as long as either, but I speak of a musical piece which must of course be natural development of certain ideas, with one part depending on another. In like manner, you might make an Ionic temple twice as long or twice as wide as the Parthenon, but you would lose the beauty of proportion by doing so. This, then, is what I mean to say of the primitive architecture and the primitive music, that they soon come to their limit. They soon are exhausted and can do nothing more. If you attempt more, it's like taxing a musical instrument beyond its powers. Campbell. This is literally true as regards Gregorian music. Instruments did not exist in primitive times which could execute any other. Reading. Modern music did not come into existence till after the powers of the violin became known. Corelli himself, who wrote not 200 years ago, hardly ventures on the shift. The piano, again I have heard, has almost given birth to Beethoven. Campbell. Modern music, then, could not be in ancient times for want of melody instruments, and in like manner Gothic architecture could not exist until vaulting was brought to perfection. Great mechanical inventions have taken place both in architecture and in music, since the age of basilicas and Gregorians, and each science has gained by it. Reading. When people who are not musicians have accused Handel and Beethoven of not being simple, I have always said, is Gothic architecture simple? A cathedral expresses one idea, but is indefinitely varied and elaborated in its parts. So is a symphony or quartet of Beethoven. Campbell. Certainly, Bateman, you must tolerate pagan architecture, or you must in consistency exclude pagan or Jewish Gregorians. You must tolerate figured music, or reprobate tracery windows. Bateman. And which are you for, Gothic with Handel or Roman with Gregorian? Campbell. For both in that place. I exceedingly prefer Gothic architecture to classical. I think it is the one true child and development of Christianity, but I won't for that reason discard the pagan style, which has been sanctified by 18th centuries, by the exclusive love of many Christian countries, and by the sanction of a host of saints. I am for toleration. Give Gothic an ascendancy, be respectful towards classical. Reading. Much as I like modern music, I can't quite go to the length to which your doctrine would lead me. I cannot indeed help liking Mozart, but surely his music is not religious. Campbell. I have not been speaking in defense of particular composers. Figured music may be right, yet Mozart or Beethoven inadmissible. In like manner, you don't suppose, because I tolerate Roman architecture, that therefore I like naked cupids to stand for cherubs, and sprawling women for the cardinal virtues. Besides, as you were saying yourself just now, we must consult the genius of our country and the religious associations of our people. Bateman. Well, I think the perfection of sacred music is Gregorian set to harmonies. They have the glorious old chants and just a little modern richness. Campbell. And I think it just the worst of all. It is a mixture of two things, each good in itself and incongruous together. It's a mixture of the first and second courses at table. It's like the architecture of the facade at Milan, half Gothic, half Grecian. Reading. It's what is always used, I believe. Campbell. Oh yes, we must not go against the age. It would be absurd to do so. I only spoke of what was right or wrong on abstract principles. And to tell the truth, I can't help liking the mixture myself, though I can't defend it. The irrepressible Bateman has Gothic and Gregorian on the brain, and in another place goes on boldly to declare that if he had his will there should be no architecture in the English churches but Gothic, and no music but Gregorian. The foregoing would probably open out in the eye, say, of the accomplished author of the Vesper Psalter, a wide field for further discussion, but so much may be fairly gathered. The Cardinal's exempligratia musical views were sensible ones, even if open, theoretically, to some differences of opinion. Omnia probate. Prove all things, he seems to say. Quod bonus tenete. Retain what is good. He had, of course, no sympathy with extravagances. He was a cultured, at any rate a refined taste, sui similis. Having grown up in a tradition that fully supported Sunday Masses accompanied by choir and orchestra, Benedict XVI remarked about one Mass in particular. Indelibly impressed in my memory, for instance, is how, when the first notes of Mozart's Coronation Mass sounded, heaven virtually opened and the presence of the Lord was experienced very profoundly. He embraced the liturgical movement in Bavaria, but noticed that little by little the tension became perceptible between the participatio actuosa, in keeping with the liturgy, and the solemn music that enveloped the sacred action, even if it was not yet perceived so strong. Written very clearly in the Constitution of the Liturgy of Vatican II is that, quote, the patrimony of sacred music must be preserved and incremented with great care, unquote. On the other hand, the text evidences, as a fundamental liturgical category, the participatio actuosa of all the faithful in the sacred action, while in the Constitution was still peacefully together. Subsequently, in the reception of the Council was often in a relation of dramatic tension. Significant environments of the liturgical movement held that, for the great choral works and even for the masses for orchestra, there would be room in the future only in concert halls, not in the liturgy. Here there could be a place only for the common singing and prayer of the faithful. On the other hand, there was consternation over the cultural impoverishment of the Church, which would necessarily flow from this. In what way could both things be reconciled? How could the council be implemented in its entirety? These were the questions posed to me and to many other faithful, to simple people, as well as to persons in possession of theological formation.